West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Denying Donald Trump's absolute immunity claim, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals panel did something very, very important to try to stop what Donald Trump does best. Delay, delay, delay. And for all of the talk how the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals spent an extra week or two on this order, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals made up for it in their denial of Donald Trump's absolute immunity by providing a very short time frame within which Donald Trump may appeal their order to the Supreme Court before their mandate gets issued back to federal judge Tanya Chutkan for her proceedings to resume. Also, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals also makes it very clear that the mere filing by Donald Trump of something called an en banc petition would not stay the mandate for the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, and the proceedings would still restart before federal judge Tanya Chutkan, absent the Supreme Court agreeing to hear this case on a petition for certiorari. So I want to take a look right here, and there were some other Easter eggs in this order by the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals as well that I think is worth mentioning. For example, the D.C. Circuit Court ruling mentioned the words office and officer 61 times in their immunity ruling. As Mueller, she wrote, our friend Allison explained, this might come in handy for the February 8th argument to keep Trump off the ballot under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, where Trump was arguing that he was not an officer. So an Easter egg right there. But let's take a look at the judgment from the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals right here. Again, it was before Judge Henderson, Childs, and Pan. You had Henderson, who was a Republican appointee. Childs and Pan were Democratic appointees in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, here is what it says. Let's pull it up right now. And it says the following. This cause came to be heard on the record on appeal from the United States District Court for the District of Columbia and was argued by counsel. On consideration thereof, it is ordered and adjudged that the order of the District Court appealed from in this cause be affirmed in accordance with the opinion of the court filed here in this date. In other words, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals affirms federal judge Tanya Chutkan's denial of Donald Trump's motion to dismiss the indictment based on Trump's claim of absolute immunity. Goes on to say in this judgment portion of the order, the clerk, this is what the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals is saying, the clerk is directed to withhold issuance of the mandate through February 12th, 2024. Just so you know what that means, the issuance of the mandate basically means that this order then gets officially transmitted to the federal judge, in this case Judge Tanya Chutkan, to resume the proceedings in the district court that have been stayed since December, when Donald Trump first appealed federal Judge Tanya Chutkan's order. That's what it means, the issuance of the mandate. It goes on to say, if within that period, appellant, referring to Donald Trump, appellant notifies the clerk in writing that he has filed an application with the Supreme Court for a stay of the mandate, pending the filing of a petition for a writ of certiorari, the clerk is directed to withhold issuance of the mandate pending the Supreme Court's final disposition of the application. The filing of a petition for rehearing or rehearing en banc will not result in any withholding of the mandate, although the grant of rehearing or rehearing en banc would result in a recall of the mandate if the mandate has already issued. So let me break that down, but that's very important, and the DC Circuit Court of Appeals is really expediting this matter after that delay. I think they realized that, in being as diligent as they were and dotting every I and crossing every T in this 57-page order, they realized that this show's got to go on the road and that there needs to be some finality here. So they are expediting this matter. So one of the things that they probably know that Trump may do in trying to delay strategically is, rather than going directly to the Supreme Court, Trump may first try to seek review from the full en banc, you spell it E-N space B-A-N-C, italicized, en banc review, which means all of the judges who comprise the DC Circuit Court of Appeals could agree to hear this and determine if they want to give a second set of eyes to the ruling by this panel. You'll recall from some of our other reporting here at the Midas Touch Network that the DC Circuit en banc panel, all of the judges decided they would not review when Donald Trump tried to appeal the ruling by the DC Circuit Court panel that affirmed Judge Tanya Chutkan's order regarding, or largely affirmed Judge Tanya Chutkan's order regarding the gag order imposed in this case. Trump sought an en banc review. So one of the delay tactics Donald Trump may have tried is, let me first go en banc, delay it there for 20, 30 days while we determine if the en banc panel wants to review it, if all of the judges want to review it. Then once they deny it, then maybe we seek a petition for certiorari, but we wait to file the petition for certiorari before the Supreme Court to try to delay everything and push all the dates back by kind of abusing the petition for en banc review before the DC Circuit. Then the Supreme Court delay. So here, this panel that affirmed Judge Tanya Chutkan's denial of the motion to dismiss filed by Trump on absolute immunity grounds, they're saying, nope, Trump, you have until February 12th. You have until the 12th if you want to file your appeal to the Supreme Court. If you do that in the next 6 days and you give us notice that you petition for certiorari, then our mandate gets stayed until the Supreme Court determines if they want to hear it or not. But if you simply seek a petition for en banc review before the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, that will not stay the issuance of our mandate. We will send this right back to Judge Tanya Chutkan for her to continue the proceedings, for the stay to be lifted, unless sometime later the en banc panel, the full DC Circuit Court, decides to take up the hearing. Then the mandate would basically be taken back, and then Judge Tanya Chutkan's proceedings would be paused. But it forces Donald Trump right away to file this appeal before the Supreme Court, if that's what he's going to want to do, and not delay. And it also kind of ties his hands that if he's going to seek en banc review, that alone is not going to stay or pause these proceedings. So in other words, it establishes a framework in totality to stop Donald Trump's delay. Now, of course, if the United States Supreme Court decides to hear it, that would stay the issuance of the mandate. We would see if the Supreme Court then orders expedited briefing or what the briefing schedule would be. But notice they did have about a 1-month briefing period on the issue of disqualification under the 14th Amendment. So will the Supreme Court take this up? Will they think that the issues being addressed by the D.C. Circuit denying Donald Trump's claim of absolute presidential immunity is even an issue that they need to take up? We will see, because it doesn't seem that while weighty constitutional issues, Donald Trump's argument was utterly absurd, claiming absolute presidential immunity, that you could order SEAL Team 6 to go and kill your political enemies and then claim absolute presidential immunity. And then Donald Trump would give all of these speeches to say, well, I'm like a rogue cop, or I'm like a bad priest. You get absolute immunity. Newsflash, they don't get absolute immunity. Newsflash 2, why are you comparing yourself to that? Newsflash 3, that has nothing to do also with the claim of absolute presidential immunity, which never existed. So the DC Circuit kind of making up for that 2-week delay by setting this expedited schedule for Trump to appeal, and rejecting any delay tactics if Trump tries to seek en banc review, unless of course the en banc panel hears it. But I don't see why the en banc panel of all DC Circuit Court judges would hear this. I think they would just reject it the same way they did with the gag order. This panel's judgment was not controversial. It's made up of a Republican appointee and Democratic appointee, so I don't think this is a controversial opinion. Let me just read for you some of the key portions of this order by the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, just to remind you how powerful this is. They write, "We cannot accept former President Trump's claim that a president has unbounded authority to commit crimes that would neutralize the most fundamental check on executive power, the recognition and implementation of election results, nor can we sanction his apparent contention that the executive has carte blanche to violate the rights of individual citizens to vote and to have their votes count." I thought that part was important. And then there was another part of this order early on where they talk about how Donald Trump became Citizen Trump, or is it Citizen Trump or Citizen Trump? And at that point, his defenses are no different than any other citizen. No one is above the law. It says, over here, it says, "Since then, hundreds of people," this is on page 3, "hundreds of people have breached the Capitol on January 6th, have been prosecuted and imprisoned, and on August 1 in Washington, D.C., former President Trump was charged in a 4-count indictment as a result of his actions challenging the election results and interfering with the sequence set forth in the Constitution for the transfer of power from one president to the next. Former President Trump moved to dismiss the indictment, and the district court denied his motion. Today, we affirm the denial. For the purpose of this criminal case, former President Trump has become Citizen Trump with all of the defenses of any other criminal defendant, but any executive immunity that may have protected him while he served as president no longer protects him against this prosecution." Seems pretty sound, seems pretty bulletproof. Feel very good that this would not prevail on appeal. This DC Circuit guarding against Donald Trump's delay, and I think things are now starting to move expeditiously. I feel comfortable and confident that this case should be slated still now for 2024. Whether that means April or June, we'll have to see what the Supreme Court does next, or July, but we will keep you posted, or even August, but within the time frame within which this could be tried in 2024. Hopefully sooner than later. Remember, the Manhattan District Attorney criminal case right now is scheduled March 25th of 2024, so we'll have to figure out where all these things get slotted. There's a status conference on February 15th in the Manhattan District Attorney criminal case for Trump's hush money payments, a status conference March 1 before Judge Eileen Cannon. The federal DC proceedings are still stayed right now as we see what's going to happen with the Supreme Court.
It is Wednesday, the 7th of February of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl. And she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? No one? Oh, my. Oh, of course, as you know, or maybe you don't, we pluralize the priests here for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Whereas the inspiration in which we are drawing such a meme is from the movie Beckett, with Richard Burton and Peter O'Toole, you know. There was only one priest, and that would have been Beckett. But here, it's many. Because there's lots of them, and they keep coming at us, don't they? They do. So, Tucker Carlson is over in Russia, ostensibly to interview Vlad. Some of us think that he's, a messenger boy. Taking some notes to Putin and bringing some notes back. Mm-hmm. We'll see how quickly old Tucker visits Mar-a-Lago. We'll see. Then we'll know. But regardless, I still consider it to be considerably more treasonous than Jane Fonda on a tank. And when I mentioned that on that, you gotta see Twitter these days with Elon. How does he pronounce his name? I don't really care. Sometimes I say Ellen. Sometimes I say Elon. But what a cesspool of disinformation that place is. So, of course, I got inundated with MAGA types telling me, but Jane Fonda passed notes from the prisoners and handed them right over to the VC. No, she didn't. I mean, it's just a out-and-out lie. That was debunked about the time that it was first floated, which was about the time that, people were saying that she should be tried for treason. Because it doesn't make any sense that she would have passed these notes to the VC about who these prisoners were that she had spoken to when it was the VC that set up the prisoner interviews to begin with. I mean, it's just trying to push some buttons. That's all they care about. It has been happening for as long as you and I have been around. Okay? They even did it to their own kind, which is, par for the course. They went after Dwight Eisenhower for being a commie. The supreme commander of the Allied forces was considered a commie. That's how extreme elements of the Republican Party are, and always have been. My God. So, if we don't have the actual same actors, we have their progeny, or those they mentored. So, we got our work cut out for us, but we have a fairly corrupted judiciary, which is always a bad thing when you're trying to, maintain a representative democracy. Mm-hmm. I get that a lot, too. We're a constitutional republic. No, we're a representative democracy. Stop trying to read more into the Constitution than what there is. That's another thing that kind of irked me this morning. Was it Kristen Welker in an expose of the 14th Amendment, said that the amendment was word salad. Section 3 was word salad. That is the most succinct sections of the Constitution that there is. I don't get it. I'm being rhetorical. I absolutely do get it. But it's still surprising that they think they can pull it off. And they can. Because apparently some people are just going to accept that at face value. The Constitution is just nothing but a word salad. It can be interpreted in any way. Yeah, I guess so. If you've become the activist judge that you were always, while at the same time lamenting all those liberal activist judges who, were just looking at the law and saying, the founders said equal rights for all. They didn't say equal rights for all white people. I'm sure they wanted to. And maybe the original intent back in the day was when they said all, they only meant white people to begin with. White men with land. But we know through the arguments and the debates and the letters that went back and forth for decades before the Constitution was even formed as really even an idea. We know that they didn't mean just white people, that a document such as that had to grow with the times. It had to evolve. Now, if the Times say that the majority of the people want to have a Nazi government that destroys representative democracy, well, that's out of hand. No, that's not allowed. You can't take representative democracy to the point that you would actually kill yourself. That's insane. Yeah, purists, We're going to take this to its purity end. Its purity end. I'll get it out. Okay, well, it's rather bothersome. But at least we know that for now, Trump doesn't have immunity. Now, he might get some kind of immunity if the MAGA court decides, all we have to do is sit on this. We don't have to expedite this like they did during Watergate or they did during Bush v. Gore. We can just sit on this. And is Trump really who they want to be able to affect more of, whatever it is, the Federalist Society, the Heritage Foundation, the Kochs, the Petersons, the Mercers, et al. Want to do with our representative democracy? Well, they might be getting the idea that they've hitched their horse to a con man, and we've been telling everybody from the very beginning that's what he is. Everybody says, we really owe it to the American people for them to know if who they're electing is a convicted felon. Well, as far as I'm concerned, he already is. $25 million fine for running a fraudulent university. Largest fine in HUD history for racial housing discrimination. I'm just saying. Fraud sounds like a felony to me. I know it was only in civil court and he paid a civil fine, but still. If they can do it, why can't we? At least ours makes sense. Okay, what do we have in store for you here in the rest of our Smothered Benedict Wednesdays as we begin in the Bistro Cafe? Well, the Montgomery, Maryland school board members apologized for the district's failure in the handling of employee misconduct complaints and vowed to heal the school system. Well, we'll see if they can do that after we get into that story. The mother of a 16-year-old who died in a workplace accident at a Mississippi poultry factory is suing the companies that hired and employed him. I personally would go after the legislatures who are pushing child labor laws to be weakened so that more kids can work more hours, more days, and less school. I'm a romantic, I guess. And New Hampshire's Attorney General announced a criminal investigation into a Texas-based company behind thousands of AI-generated calls impersonating President Biden. So who is that? Is Parscali down in Texas? Wasn't he first stationed there, or didn't he come from there? And what about Jacob Wool and his older guy that drags him along? They've already been convicted for similar types of behavior. We'll see. Well, after the break, we move to the chef's table, where a Russian man who defected from a high-ranking position with the Wagner Group, I always like to say Wagner, but the Wagner Group has been given permission to stay in Norway, but was refused permanent asylum. And the Netherlands is having trouble forming a new far-right government around neo-Nazi Geert Wilders. No wonder. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank her for doing so and everything else. Thank you, Kelly. Across the page to the left from that chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you could possibly send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink once a month, thus becoming a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, that really helps us pay our bills and continue this powerhouse of resistance. Also, I would like to welcome our new Patreons of Netroots Radio. Thank you for helping us out. Your recurring patronage is greatly appreciated. And I'd like to thank those of you who have been recurring Patreons in the past, who are now re-upping their recurring patronage. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on, all those social media platforms out there like Twitter and Mastodon and Spoutable and Blue Sky, etc., even Facebook, you can do so by going to @Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of all of those, and we all take care of Facebook. So there you go. You can follow me on all those social media platforms, and like Tumblr and Instagram, all of those. And I can be found, of course, at Justice Putnam. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime. And you can get to that diary rather quickly if you go to my social media feeds, because the links to the diaries are right there. And then you can read the actual articles from the actual reporters. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, even Spoutable. So pick them up. All right. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the Washington Post by Nicole Asbury. Montgomery County School Board members apologized yesterday, Tuesday, for the district's failures in handling of employee misconduct complaints and vowed to heal the school system. We are deeply sorry for the pain that this has caused so many employees and the harm to this district, Board President Carla Silvestri said during a meeting. It has not always listened to its employees. It has not always properly investigated complaints, and it has not created a process that ensures employees feel free to speak up. It, in the third position, I think, probably means she. The board president, you could say I, but let's go with the royal we, or it. She added that it was time for the school system to heal. The school board met to review findings from investigations by a private law firm and the county's inspector general of how the school system handled allegations of employee misconduct. The investigations were launched after the Washington Post published an investigation in August that revealed former Farquhar Middle School principal Joel Beetleman was the subject of at least 18 verbal or written reports alleging sexual harassment, bullying, and retaliation submitted to the school district dating back to 2016. Wow, who took over the presidency then, I wonder? While he was under investigation, the school board promoted Beetleman to become principal of Paint Branch High School. He has denied many of the allegations, and he left the school system in January. Shortly after the post-investigation was published, the school system announced it hired the Baltimore-based law firm Jackson Lewis to scrutinize its handling of the complaints. A heavily redacted report released by the school board found that 5 individuals who participated in Beetleman's promotion process knew about an internal investigation into his conduct, among other findings. The Montgomery County Inspector General later announced it would launch inquiries to review all allegations about Beetleman submitted to the school system by July of 2023 and other allegations that were not investigated, as well as a broader evaluation of the school system's handling of misconduct complaints. A report released in November on the initial inquiry found that Beetleman violated the system's sexual harassment and bullying policies. In its second inquiry, the Inspector General's office found that school officials were warned 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, of deficiencies within the Department of Compliance and Investigations, which is charged with evaluating employee misconduct complaints. However, the school system did little to fix the problems, according to the Watchdog's reports. Goldberg of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. The mother of a 16-year-old who died in a workplace accident at a Mississippi poultry factory is suing the companies that hired and employed him, accusing them of failing to follow safety standards that could have prevented his death. In court papers filed at the Forest County Circuit Court last week, attorneys for Edelima Perez Ramirez said Marjac Poultry skirted safety protections leading to the death of her son, Duvan Perez. The lawsuit follows a January report by the U.S. Department of Labor's Occupational Safety and Health Administration that declared numerous safety violations related to the death of the teenager who immigrated to Mississippi from Guatemala years ago. A Marjac spokesman did not respond to email and phone messages because when has anybody ever done that? In previous statements, the company has said it relied on a staffing agency to hire workers and did not know Duvan was underage. Federal labor law bans the hiring of minors in several hazardous work sites, including slaughterhouses and meatpacking plants. In July, Duvan became the third worker to die in less than 3 years at the Hattiesburg, Mississippi plant owned by Marjac, a Georgia-based poultry production company. In 2020, 33-year-old Joel Velasco Toto died after a co-worker inserted an air compression hose in his rectum, the lawsuit says. My God. In 2021, 48-year-old Bobby Butler died after becoming entangled in a machine he was cleaning. Workplace safety officials launched an investigation into Duvan's death in July. OSHA investigators found that he was killed while performing a deep clean of a machine in the plant's deboning area. He became caught in a still energized machine's rotating shaft and was pulled in. Zakaruski and Panshu Verma of the Washington Post brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. New Hampshire's Attorney General announced yesterday, Tuesday, a criminal investigation into a Texas-based company that was allegedly behind thousands of AI-generated calls impersonating President Biden in the run-up to the state's primary election. Attorney General John Formella, a Republican, said in a news conference that his office also had sent the telecom company Life Corp a cease and desist letter ordering it to immediately stop violating the state's laws against voter suppression in elections. A multi-state task force is also preparing for potential civil litigation against the company, and the Federal Communications Commission ordered Lingo Telecom to stop permitting illegal robocall traffic after an industry consortium found that the Texas-based company carried the calls on its network. Formella said the actions were intended to serve notice that New Hampshire and other states will take action if they find artificial intelligence was used to interfere in elections. Don't try it, he said. If you do, we will work together to investigate. We will work together with partners across the country to find you, and we will take any enforcement action available to us under the law. The consequences for your actions will be severe. New Hampshire is issuing subpoenas to Life Corp, Lingo Telecom, and other individuals and entities that may have been involved in the calls. Well, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, mundane monsters among us. Like many families with young kids, the Haas family is typical. Mom Hedvig gardens and Dad Rudolph strives for promotions at work. However, there's a bit of a difference here. You see, the Haas's live next door to Auschwitz, and as the commandant of the infamous death camp, Rudolph personally oversees the daily disposal of Jews who, according to the plan of Rudolph's bosses, Eichmann and ultimately Hitler, are to be eliminated as part of their final solution. While The Zone of Interest is as much a movie about the Holocaust as Schindler's List, it differs in that the focus is on the people who run the camps rather than those in it. When prisoners do appear, it's in the background. While little of the inside of the camp is seen, it is heard in a chillingly disquieting a cappella soundtrack with distinct gunshots and occasional screams amidst the German dialogue.
and it's as effective as any horror movie. Likewise, mundane scenes like one with Hedwig showing off a new fur coat or sorting through a pile of children's clothing that Rudolph brings home from work take on a whole new meaning when you realize where they came from. Christian Friedel and Sandra Holler are remarkable in the respective leading roles as Randolph and Hedwig. Holler, who recently received an Oscar nomination for her work in Anatomy of a Fall, shows why she's one of the best international actresses working today. Their understated, minimalist portrayals bring home these monsters, seemingly average in their day-to-day life. The display of and begged questions about the gaping hole in their humanity makes The Zone of Interest one of the most effective and unforgettable movies about the Holocaust ever. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Gaines. Even if you are a safe, experienced driver, accidents can happen at any time. Young children are especially at risk for injury and death in a motor vehicle crash. Dr. Erin Sauber-Schatz is a researcher with CDC's National Center for Injury Prevention and Control. She's joining us today to discuss the importance of keeping children properly restrained in motor vehicles. Welcome to the show, Erin.
Thank you.
Erin, how many children are killed or injured each year in a motor vehicle crash in the U.S.?
In 2013, 638 children aged 12 and under died in a crash, and over 127,000 were injured.
How effective have child safety seats and other safety devices been in preventing injuries and death among children?
Car seats and booster seats are very effective at preventing injury and death in a crash, but the most effective seat is the one that parents use to buckle their kids on every drive.
Where's the safest place for children to ride in a car?
The back seat is the safest place for children to ride in a car, buckled in an age and size-appropriate car seat, booster seat, or seatbelt.
How long should a child ride in a safety seat?
Children should use a car seat until they're at least 5 years old, and a booster seat until the adult seatbelt fits properly. The adult seatbelt fits properly when the lap belt lays across the upper thighs, not the stomach, and the shoulder belt lays across the shoulder, not the neck.
Erin, where should parents go in their community to get help installing and using car seats?
Parents can get one-on-one help free of charge from a certified child passenger safety technician. You can find a tech near you at cert.safekids.org and click on Find a Tech. Another option is to check with your local police or fire department.
Erin, where can listeners get more information about restraining children properly in motor vehicles?
Listeners can go to cdc.gov and type in the search box, Child Passenger Safety.
Thanks, Erin. I've been talking today with CDC's Dr. Erin Sauber-Schatz about the importance of keeping kids safe in a motor vehicle. Remember, for children under the age of 13, properly restrain them in the back seat. If you're unsure about how to install or use car seats, check with your local police or fire department. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Robert Gaines for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
If you love them enough to turn off your music and pretend like their music is your music.
This is Mommy's jam.
Then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Let's play it again.
Check today at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work.
Sorry, I'm late.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi.
Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
A real-life get-out-of-jail-free card? Seriously?
I'm Baratunde Thurston from The Onion, and also, mother. You're listening to the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
In New York, the card, although it's called that, doesn't actually get you out of jail, but it does get you out of tickets for speeding and other moving violations. According to a recent New York Times expose, quote, the police unions distribute the wallet-sized courtesy card to members, who in turn pass them out to friends and family members. The card has in large font on the front the name of the union, and the name of the officer who distributed the card is generally written on the back. So, motorists who are pulled over hand the card to a cop with the unwritten understanding that the cop will ignore the infraction and let the driver go. The ostensible justification for these cards? The police say they are symbols of the bonds between the police and their extended family and friends. But the article highlights a cop who didn't follow the unwritten rule and professionally has paid the price and now is suing. The take-home here, we have another example of rules that theoretically apply to everyone, but just don't apply to everyone equally.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. The D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled unanimously February 6th that Donald Trump does not have presidential immunity from prosecution for alleged criminal actions after leaving the White House. A lower federal court had previously found that Trump didn't have immunity when he left office. The decision allowed the case of Trump's alleged election interference in the 2020 election to move forward, but Trump appealed. The three-judge panel affirmed that decision, quote, for the purpose of this criminal case, former President Trump has become Citizen Trump with all the defenses of any other criminal defendant. But any executive immunity that may have protected him while he served as president no longer protects him against this prosecution. Trump's lawyers had filed 4 motions to dismiss, including presidential immunity, constitutional provisions, statutory grounds, and allegations of selective and vindictive prosecution. Legal scholars had suggested the arguments were Hail Marys and were all rejected by the appeals court. Trump's lawyers are expected to ask for a review by all D.C. Circuit judges. While the rejection of the immunity decision only applies to cases in the D.C. Circuit, it impacts the largest federal case, that of Special Counsel Jack Smith's investigation of Trump's effort to overturn the 2020 election. We have a link to the D.C. Circuit's opinion at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal. Find us on Facebook at American Democracy Minute.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1913. Law enforcement officers and mining company guards rode on an armored train, firing indiscriminately into a tent colony of striking miners and their families at Holly Grove, West Virginia. For nearly a year, what became known as the Paint Creek, Cabin Creek mine wars had raged in the rich coal range of West Virginia. The miners wanted union recognition and the representation of the United Mine Workers of America. The mine owners refused. The mine bosses evicted more than 35,000 miners and their families from company housing in towns, leaving the evicted miners homeless and living in tent communities. As tensions grew, shootouts between the owners' private security forces and the striking miners were frequent, resulting in 20 deaths. More than 200 miners and unionists were arrested and jailed. One of those unionists arrested was 86-year-old labor leader Mother Jones. On this day, the miners had raided a company store. In retaliation, the county sheriff, his deputies, and mine guards boarded a train, specially reinforced with armor and mounted with a machine gun. The train was commissioned by the state's so-called Progressive Party, the Bull Moose Party of Teddy Roosevelt. Nicknamed the Bull Moose Special, the armored train approached Holly Grove. It gave 2 blasts of its whistles, then the machine guns let loose on the tents of sleeping miners and their families. One man was killed trying to get his pregnant wife to safety. Another striker, Sesko Eastep, was killed as more than 100 machine gun bullets blazed through the frame of his house. The assault left several more injured. The bloody mine wars in West Virginia eventually caused an inquiry by the U.S. Congress, the first such congressional inquiry into the actions of a state government.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 33 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting much cooler temperatures than yesterday. Looks like maybe we'll get to the upper 40s. Right now, we are in a wintry mix until early this afternoon, maybe even later. Winds will be light and variable. And right now, it is quite wet, but very cold. So there is a bit of snow dusted at elevations not very much higher than where the mothership resides at the moment. So it may be giving us a little bit of a whiteout, and hopefully that isn't dangerous for people. Let's hope. Cloudy with occasional showers overnight, expecting something a little less than a quarter inch of rain, so quite a drop. Lows in the mid to upper 30s. Winds will be light and variable. And then cloudy with showers tomorrow, less than a quarter inch. Highs in the mid 40s. Winds light and variable. Pollen is still rated as none here in our little village of Rogue River, Oregon. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 18 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is low at level 2. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.71 inches. Visibility is at 6 miles, and relative humidity is at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 44 degrees and cloudy with a active statement about a potential disruption due to heavy rain. Paris is 53 degrees with rain. Rome is 58 degrees and partly cloudy. Bagram is 28 and clear. Kyiv is 48 with light rain. Hong Kong is 55 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 38 degrees and clear. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 62 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 52 degrees and cloudy with a coastal flooding watch, so take care. Chicago, Illinois is 40 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York is 42 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Staff at the World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. A Russian man who defected from a high-ranking position in the Wagner Group has been given permission to stay in Norway, but was refused permanent asylum, a Norwegian newspaper reported yesterday, Tuesday. The lawyer for Andrei Medvedev, Bernjulf Risnes, told Dagbladet that his client was granted temporary residence due to the security risk involved in sending him back to Russia, but was not given permanent residence or citizenship. Medvedev sought asylum in January of 2023 after having defected from Wagner and fled to Norway, crossing illegally over the country's 123-mile border with Russia, saying he feared for his life if he were sent back. Yeah, I would guess. He said he agreed to join the Wagner Group, a private Russian military company known for its brutal tactics, from July to November of 2022, but he left after his contract was extended without his consent. He told Russian dissident group Gulagu.net that he was ready to tell everything he knew about Wagner and its owner, Yevgeny Prigozhin, a millionaire with ties to Russian Vladimir Putin, the guy that was blown out of the sky in his jet. He said he was willing to testify about any possible war crimes he witnessed, though he denied participating in any himself. In April of 2023, Medvedev was sentenced to 14 days in jail in Norway for disorderly conduct and for carrying an air gun in a public place. Officers had detained him outside a pub in Oslo following a February bar brawl.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Mike Corder of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Talks to form a far-right-led government in the Netherlands has come to a premature end for now, leaving the Netherlands in limbo amid a stalled move to build a political coalition around anti-Islam lawmaker Geert Wilders. Wilders' Party for Freedom, or the PVV, swept to victory in the country's November parliamentary election on campaign pledges that included slashing immigration. He was in talks with leaders of 3 other parties to form a government that would have held a solid majority in the 150-seat lower house of the Dutch parliament. But potential coalition partners were wary of his more extreme anti-Islam plans. Wilders sought to appease them last month by withdrawing draft legislation that included a ban on mosques, Islamic schools, and the Quran. Well, that was nice of him. Despite the concessions, tensions came to a head last night, Tuesday, when one of the leaders, Peter Omtzigt, walked out of the coalition talks. The official shepherding the negotiations was due to report back to lawmakers within days on any progress the parties have made during some 2 months of closed-door meetings. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will be meeting up here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme aux langues de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. De novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.